now, in a GBNews exclusive, a campaigner has revealed how he's been blocked from accessing court transcripts from the grooming gang trials.
Well, we can reveal that a judge from Bradford Crown Court has ruled that it would not be in the public interest to release information.
Well, joining us now is Adam Wren, who runs the Open Justice UK campaign. Adam, thanks so much for joining us on Saturday Morning Live today. Why are you campaigning to have these transcripts released?
So I'm from the area where these crimes happened. It's something I've always cared about. And in January, when this all kicked off again, I was reading the transcripts that were released along with everybody else, and I realised that a lot of them were not made public. And I realised one of the reasons they weren't made public is because they're so expensive to obtain. There was a case in Hansard where one of the girls tried to obtain the transcripts and she was quoted like £7,000. And I realised, well, we can crowdfund the money for this. We can raise it so that people can access them, so the victims can access them. We raised £100,000, I think, in a week, an incredible amount of money. I was feeling very, very positive at the outset of the campaign. So we set out immediately to work, and I put countless hours into this since. We've mapped something like 450 different defendants across 90 trials. And we, unfortunately, have been blocked from a few cases, including the Old Bailey. But by far the most explosive, in my mind, the most egregious, was this one from Bradford. It was really ridiculous.
This is a trial from Keighley in 2016, and this judge, Mr. Justice Rose, has told you that it's not in the public interest for this information to be released. What can you tell us more about your application and the rejection? Right,
so we submitted an application saying essentially that we think this information needs to be public because it's never been public before, and that we would take there's considerations that need to be made. There's Section 1 of the Sexual Offences Act 1992, all about protecting victims.
Privacy and the
Right. And I've sought legal advice, so our application incorporated this. I've had lawyers look at it and draft it with me, and it was rejected on the grounds of public interest. Now, my opinion here is, we've acquired 11 sentencing remarks so far, and we have 20 awaiting delivery to us that we've had accepted. And of those 11 that we've acquired, I've given a bunch to MPs and investigative journalists and other people while we can't quite release them yet because the judges need to go through and redact and such. One of the people that acquired them was Katie Lem, who used those transcripts to make that incredible speech that she gave last week in the House of Commons. And Jess Phillips's response was that this information, we don't need the National Inquiry because this information is already public. However, some of the information that Katie raised in the Commons was from these transcripts. It's not been public before. So the idea that not getting them is not that it somehow harms the public interest when this information isn't available and has been raised in the Commons is, I think, ridiculous. It's ridiculous on its face.
Do you think there's a sense amongst politicians, and maybe some in the media as well, that some of these details are frankly just so harrowing, so grotesque, that it would be just easier not to know? They think, well, we know what the grooming gangs are now, we know it's appalling, we're hoping for an inquiry whether or not we get one, but actually just the details are just too difficult. Do you think that kind of deep human reason actually is underneath this denial of wanting to know?
I think I can't speak to the reasoning behind everybody in the party that's blocking this. And I know that behind closed doors there are many Labour MPs, some of them quite vocal, that have been in support of a national inquiry. I don't know why the decision makers haven't gone for it. I think it's a mistake on their part. I think they're hoping that it will go away. I don't think this is going away. And I think 4 years from now, when we have another election, this issue will be front and centre. And I think these politicians are going to have to stand up on the debate stage and they're going to have to defend their record in front of the public. And they're going to have to, unfortunately, face the people and admit that they refused an investigation into what I think are some of the most horrific crimes that have ever been committed in the 2,000-year history of this nation.
Adam, that 2016 trial, the details you're trying to release, the abusers, 12 of them were jailed for assaulting a girl as young as 13. Crimes described as terrible and heartless. But there's limited information about the failures potentially associated with attempts to deal with this problem at the time, because they were receiving justice about a decade after the event. What other information did you get in that rejection which you think is troubling or points towards censoring that information coming to light?
So it's not just this rejection. We've had another rejection from the Old Bailey, where we have a whole email chain where they stated that they believe that it was a CSE case and therefore they have to review it. And then the third email that they sent back to us said, we've just realised that it's CSE and therefore we're not releasing it. But they knew that in the first place.
But for Bradford, they said it was not appropriate to release it. Can you give us more detail from that rejection specifically?
So the only information that we really have from that rejection is that they believe that the debate, given the debate that's happening in the public sphere, that releasing more information is not in the public interest.
So that's judges trying to control the debate we're having in public, it seems to me.
Right. And one of the issues that's been raised again with these gangs is that the reason that this was allowed to happen is because the authorities were turning a blind eye. They didn't want this debate to happen. They feared it would embolden the far right. This culture, we're told, has gone. It's evaporated and they're taking the issue seriously.
And of course, at the time, any member of the public or journalist would have been able to sit in court and hear the trials. But of course, at that time, it was not widely understood how these cases were connected, how widespread it was, the scale of the crimes. So it's even more important now, isn't it, to be able to tie all these things together?
Right, and there's also a lot that just hasn't. Much of this has been reported by local media, but there's a lot that hasn't. I've spoken with a few victims and their families, and they're very supportive when I say that my focus with the transcripts especially, the one thing that they really reveal are the failings of the police, the failings of the local authorities and the prosecution. There's one transcript that we have where a girl went to the police and to report her abuser. She left and her abuser sent her a message saying, I know that you were with the police because I've paid off somebody in CID and I know that you're planning to go to a refuge. And she ended up pulling out. She ended up refusing their help.
Yeah. That information is already in the public domain with regards to, that's a Rotherham case, I believe, but there'll be so many more that is yet to be released because the details weren't captured back in the time. So, Adam, thank you so much for the work you're doing. Really interesting stuff and getting this in the public interest.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Right, we do have a statement from the judiciary. A spokesman there said that transcripts of court hearings can be provided following approval by a judge. Requests are dealt with on a case-by-case basis and are subject to judicial discretion.
The grooming gang scandal, in my opinion, remains a national stain on our country that refuses to fade, no matter how hard politicians try to brush it under the carpet. Labour's shameful U-turn on promises of those 5 inquiries has sparked fury, and quite rightly so. How spineless was it, slipping this betrayal in before the Easter break? And in my opinion, they were hoping to dodge due scrutiny. But what does it tell you when Tom Crowther KC, tasked with aiding inquiries, recently questioned government officials asking if he's even still needed? I think it's as clear as day the government is kicking this into the long grass, praying we're all just going to forget about it. And just yesterday, there was another slap in the face of victims as the judge blocked the release of a key trial transcript citing public interest. A slap in the face to victims demanding the truth be told. And the ever-brilliant Sir Trevor Phillips called Labour's inaction utterly shameful, pointing to their fear of upsetting the Pakistani Muslim demographic in Labour-held seats. And I think he's dead right, isn't he? Labour's running scared of the voters they've courted in areas transformed by mass migration. Now they're suffering from their own defence of migration policies. Labour, of course, would deny all of these claims. But in my opinion, this isn't just negligence. I think it's a cover-up rooted deep in our institutions. Why else would they dodge inquiries into this sick pandemic decades after it was exposed? Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has insisted the victim-centred, locally led inquiries will still go ahead, while a Home Office source told reporters more could take place in addition to the 5. So my question is this: can any government be trusted to deal with this crisis? Lee, this is ongoing. And it has been ongoing through multiple governments, not just Labour, of course, but the Tories were able to tackle this as well. Can anyone be trusted to solve this problem?
Well, I think specifically Labour definitely can't be trusted to solve this problem because of the reasons just given. It seems very clear to me that they're making... This is obviously that them trying to protect the Muslim vote. And what's been so painful to watch over and over again is seeing them standing in front of the cameras, looking concerned, telling us that they're going to, this is a really important issue to them. And then this happens. Like right at the very last minute, they come into Parliament and they kind of kibosh the whole thing. I think it's utterly disgraceful, and I was very pleased to hear Charles Phillips say...
Does anybody on the panel actually keep a straight face when you're saying this? I mean, really?
I think it's bizarre that you can't keep a straight face while he's talking about it.
No, what's painful is to see Conservative politicians who had responsibility for exactly this issue, who had a report that was comprehensive, an inquiry that was comprehensive.
It wasn't comprehensive, Kai, that's wrong.
Well, it went
it's like a line.
Well, it went some of the way, and then none of the recommendations were implemented. So... to be honest, there and say, and for you and consecutive Conservative politicians who had responsibility over this, to sit and say that the Labour Party is doing nothing after, 10 months of government, when they sat on this for years and years and years and did nothing, I think it's ridiculous.
So I'll pass to someone else on the panel, but I mean, this is ridiculous. Even the Home Office is doing a U-turn on their U-turn, on their U-turn, on their U-turn. There's clearly something going on here, in my opinion, that is a little bit it's not right. Even Sir Trevor Phillips, for goodness sake, who I believe is a Labour Party member, has called this out what it is. I mean, I think we've got to start asking some serious questions, Emma.
Yeah, I don't know, you talk about keeping a straight face, but you were smirking while Lee was talking, and I think it's just, if you're talking about it being disgraceful what you do with your face in response to this, that's pretty disgraceful. I think the issue here is that even the locally led inquiries is not enough. We need to have a national inquiry in order that people can be compelled to give evidence. It seems as if, whether you think it's true or not, the Labour Party are not exactly doing good optics, even if they do sincerely want to do something about this, because if they really sincerely wanted to get to the bottom of this, they would be able to do that, but they're refusing to.
Well, obviously, the government would argue that they are doing everything they can. They're doing more than the Tories did, that they're trying to action the recommendations of the J report. Keir Starmer said he wants to action that report before anything else happens. Are we being a little bit unfair to Labour?
No, we're not. Let's knock out this myth that report sufficiently addressed the problem of grooming gangs, because it didn't. That was a report on child sexual abuse, of which grooming gangs was a subsection of a subsection. It didn't go into the cultural reasons behind the grooming gangs problem. It didn't go into the systemic reasons as to why this keeps happening to this day. That's why we need a national inquiry. And it is such a sad indictment on this government that it takes an now independent MP in Rupert Lowe, who's the only one who has the guts to actually raise the money and put this on the national agenda.
Well, the Tories are saying they're going to do a national inquiry if they win the next election.
Sure.
Would that be better than the local inquiries Labour's promising?
No, I actually completely agree that the local inquiries don't go far enough, and that's just insufficient from this government. And I'll hold my hands up. I'm a member, but not a member of the government. But I'll say it's not enough. It's not enough because the public feeling is there. The public interest is there. And that's actually one of the main causes for a public inquiry. One of the main standards that we have is if there's public interest, then, it's a shame there should be a public inquiry. It's a shame there's a Netflix
documentary about it.
Oh, yes.
But
to read conspiracies into this, I think, is wrong.
OK, so a rise to reply here from the Home Office. A Home Office spokesperson has said it's wholly wrong to claim the government is cancelling local child abuse inquiries. We will pursue justice for victims without fear or favour, and claims we would not do so to avoid offending any group are false. We are providing $5 million to help support local inquiries so we can deliver the meaningful change victims deserve.
Rubbish.